Hope everybody had a good break. Yes? Too short, too long? Never too long, right? All right, we have some very important announcements before we begin, so I'll hand it off to our guests.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan Gorman. I'm an organizer with Massburg. And so I'm just here to talk to you about some of our volunteer opportunities here on campus, as well as our leadership programs and our internship program, as well as some of the full-time jobs that we have. Go ahead. So yeah, while I'm talking, Isman will pass out some interest cards that you can fill out if you like any of what you hear. Just put down your name and your contact information, email address, phone number, and anything that you might be interested in getting involved with us. So how many people have heard of Massburg? Yeah, most of you, probably, I hope. So Massburg is a statewide organization. It's student-run and student-funded, and it's been around since 1978 here at UMass Lowell. So we are an organization that focuses on getting students mobilized as in organizing and activism on campaigns around some of the biggest social and environmental issues of our time. So we work on things like renewable energy, on helping students register to vote. We've got a campaign called Save the Bees right now on making textbooks in higher education more affordable. A lot of different issues that are really important, really huge things that are really impacting the lives of college students on a daily basis. And the way that we are able to do all of this work is through our funding, which comes from the $11 per student per semester waivable fee that we have here at UMass Lowell. And that pays for staff, organizers like myself, but also for lawyers, advocates, all kinds of folks who work with us to help win on our campaigns and make progress, both at the state level in Boston, as well as at the national level down in Washington, D.C. So what we've got a lot of things we're working on right now, but our biggest thing is our 100% renewable energy campaign. So some of you may know there is a bill in the Massachusetts legislature right now that would commit the state to moving towards 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. We all know that climate change is a massive problem. It's a huge issue. It's the defining issue of our time. It seems like pretty much every day you turn on the news, there's something going on. We've got 70 degrees in Massachusetts last weekend. There's wildfires in Australia. There's droughts all over the world. There's all kinds of things happening. So we know that this is something we need to do something about, and we also know what we need to do to make it happen. We know that we can't continue to power our society on fossil fuels. They cause climate change. They pollute the environment. They are unsafe. You have things like the pipeline explosion in Lawrence last year. We need to move away from this as quickly as possible, and we have the ability to do it. Massachusetts has been a leader on issues like this in the past, and we should continue to be. So this bill is a huge step in the right direction. It would commit us, as I say, by 2050 to 100% renewable energy, and we are working to get that passed this legislative session. This is something that Massburg has been working on for about 4 years now, and it's actually a really big thing here in Lowell. One of our state representatives who represents the Lowell community, a guy named Tom Golden, is actually the chair of the committee that this bill is in. So we are working really hard this semester to get out there and show that this is an issue that young people, that students, and people in the Lowell community care about, to make it a priority so that we can get this passed. But that is not the only thing we're working on. As I say, we are working with the New Voters Project to register students to vote, both in the primary election this winter as well as the national general elections next fall. We also have our Save the Bees campaign, which has successfully gotten a bee hotel built as a habitat to save pollinators on this campus, and we're going to be continuing to do more work with that. We are working, as I say, to help make textbooks more affordable. I'm sure this is something that a lot of people care about because they are too expensive, and there are a lot of solutions that we can do to make that not as big of an issue for students. So if you, as I say, if you are interested in any of that, in being a part of this in any way, whether it be as a once in a while volunteer, or if you want to take on more responsibility, be in a big leadership role, whatever you think makes sense for you is totally on the table, and we would love to have you. So as I say, fill out the interest cards if you are interested, your name, contact info, so we can get in touch with you. And make sure that you can also fill in whatever opportunities you might be interested in getting involved with. When you're done with those, you can pass them. Whether or not you fill them out, pass them to the end of the row. We'll collect them, and yeah, if you haven't filled them out, pass them back as well, so we can reuse those. And while you're doing that, I'll just real quick talk a little bit about my own personal story, how I got involved. So I grew up in New Hampshire. I went to college in Vermont. I've always loved being outdoors. Really cared about the environment, and felt like this is something that I wanted to do what I can to protect. But at some point when I was in college, I started to kind of realize that the reason that environmental issues and a lot of other issues keep existing is not that we don't know what needs to be done. It's not that we've done enough science or figured it out. We know what needs to happen. We just need to build the political will to make it happen. And so that is what inspired me to get involved with BIRD. There was not a chapter where I went to school, and I wish there had been. It's something I would have loved to be involved with. But I have really loved the opportunity to get involved now, and am really excited to work with folks. So yeah, class name starts at the end of the row. We will pick those up, and thank you so much for your time.
All right, so because this is how life is on day one, right? So I just emailed an urgent email to the health folks, and let me make a quick phone call because otherwise we're going to be in a jam today. right. Good morning. Oh, hold on. So, do most of you have like a laptop or something that you can hook onto, even if it's sharing with your neighbor, so that we can look at Blackboard where the syllabus and all the materials are until they come and fix this? They said somebody's coming, but good luck, right? Anyway, so first of all, welcome back. If you open Blackboard, you will see on the, hold on, one of the texts is responding. On the left, you're going to find several tabs. The course materials contains the syllabus, and that's where all of the course materials, slides, and everything related to the course will be posted as we go through the course. We're hoping to start adding the remaining chapters within the next couple of weeks, so you have all of the materials up front, but we're making edits to the content. So just stay tuned for that. There's two links for lecture capture, as before. So my lecture capture, Dr. Geiger's lecture capture is also available. So again, if you want to listen to me again, something that I've said that you missed, that you want to go back and what did he say? Or you can go back. If you want to go ahead and listen to Dr. Geiger's lectures as well to get it from a different perspective, it's the same content, just delivered by a different person. That people find that helpful, so that's why we have both of them there. The fourth tab is the link to the textbook. So it turns out that, oh, you're dealing with the projector? So it turns on, and it says the Hitachi thing, and it says no input, and then after a few minutes it just kind of goes away because it's not detecting anything.
What's going on.
Okay. If you need me to stop talking, I will, but I'll continue talking. Okay. So it's currently on over here, and it was on, and now it's kind of like in a sleep mode because it's not detecting anything. Just letting you know. So the textbook that I'm currently writing, as you probably most of you know, I've only managed to finish Phychem 1, and I actually have chapter 6, but it's not ready to be released yet. So what we've been doing is using an alternative textbook, which we had been using before we started transitioning to the textbook that I'm writing. So the company, which is a Wiley product, the company has created a custom textbook that only contains the chapters that we will cover, which is at a much lower cost than purchasing the whole book. This is the whole book. It comes in hardcover. It also comes in this loose leaf, kind of, you can put it into a binder type of a thing. But this is, I don't remember the price, but it's in excess of $100. If you click on the link, for those of you who are able, again, look with your neighbor if you can. If you click on that link, it's going to bring you to a website that actually manages a whole bunch of textbooks for a whole bunch of companies. And they work with Wiley and Macmillan and all of them. And this particular custom textbook is there as it's electronic, obviously. You cannot order a print version. It's only an ebook, but it's $40, $39.40. Okay? So if you're comfortable with going all electronic, then you can save yourself a lot of money by just paying the $40. And the book it's a lifetime purchase. You're going to own it forever. And I don't know if you're going to want to go back at any point after May, but it's yours, right? Otherwise, again, you have options to, at your leisure, at your discretion. I don't think the bookstore here may carry it. You may have to check. But, of course, Amazon, Wiley directly. But that means it's the full textbook because there's no such custom one for print. Okay? So the author is Kenneth Raymond, 4th edition. Chemistry and integrated approach, general organic and biological chemistry and integrated approach. So this is just FYI, in case you have to have the paper and whatever. So that's the alternative option for, again, more cost. Just FYI. All right, and then of course the last tab is the access to the Sapling Learning homework. If you click on that, then they've done something. If you click on that, then you're going to get to the regular page of the Sapling Learning. And if you go to, let's go now into the syllabus for a moment. So if you go into the syllabus, let me just find that page really quick since I'm talking about that. This is on page 4. The course ID that you need to find in Sapling to hook up to this course is listed there, University of Massachusetts Lowell, HSCI 2520, Spring 20, Horta/Geiger. Okay? If you're new to sapling and you don't know what I'm talking about, first you can probably get better information from one of your classmates. Alternatively, please come see me during my office hours and I will be glad to guide you through the process of creating an account, logging into the system, finding the course, etc., etc. For those of you who are coming directly from FIChem 1 from the fall, when you purchased sapling at that point, you should have had the option to purchase the 2 semester, which puts a credit on your account, and then when you go purchase the new one, you're going to be technically charged the $40 to $42, but then you apply the credit from the 2 semester purchase, and then it brings down the price by 50% or something like that. So just FYI. All right. So let's go to the beginning of the syllabus. Again, everybody here is sort of a veteran, so we don't need to spend too much time on this. So 2 instructors, Dr. Geiger and myself. Her office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays 2 to 3, and she will be here also on Fridays from 11 to 12. Otherwise, you have to set an appointment with her. Her office is over here in Weed 101. And then I'm in Dugan across the way. My office hours officially will be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. And whenever we have a quiz, those particular Mondays, not every Monday, but when we have a quiz, I will hold the group office hours in Weed 100. So you can come in and ask me last-minute questions and whatever. Or we can talk about the weather. We can talk about whatever you want, right? But I'm going to be there hosting anybody who wants to come for that hour-ish before the quizzes. Otherwise, again, you have to email me, and then we set up an appointment if those times don't work. All right. So this is simply the continuation of the first half of the course. We're going to obviously apply what we learned in that first half to the content of this second half. So we're actually in the middle of chapter 5. So we're going to be starting with chemical reactions, and then it goes in that direction. And then ultimately, about a third of the course is wrapping up some of the inorganic, physical, analytical chemistry concepts, a little bit of organic as well. And then about the last 2/3 of the course will be an introduction to biochemistry. So we're going to learn about biological systems, biological molecules, which is largely what's happening within the human body. But again, you need to apply the knowledge and concepts, material that you learned from the first half of the course into that particular section once we get to it. People tend to like that section most because it's the one that truly relates to things that are happening within living systems and living cells and things of the sort. And you're going to be learning about all kinds of structures and molecules that are directly more tangible for you, particularly if you're in the world of nutrition, the world of pharmaceuticals. Hey, Matt. Because things can't go right on day one, right? So it turns on, but it says no input, and then after a few minutes it just goes kind of in a sleep mode because it's not connecting.
Yeah, I saw what was going on remotely.
Okay.
And it said, oh, everything's all connected. So I called Dave. I said, Dave, it's all connected. And he goes, oh, where is it? I said, it's for Holland. It's all connected.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I put my hand behind the scenes, but I can't.
No, I can follow. I know it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this thing's spaghetti soup.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you saw it, I said RBQ, and I said RBQ, and I forgot that this is one of these regular ones. It's not the ones like in the store. The laser.
Yeah. I mean, this is a good thing that you can kind of do a diagnosis-ish, you know?
Do an on-off.
No, I just power something. It's getting up to the monitor.
PC.
So what's the learning lesson about this?
Chalkboards work better.
When you rely on technology to do everything, the moment the technology fails, you can't do anything, right?
Right.
So this is why for my second class, it's going to be all on the board. FYI, for those of you who are in that class.
This is all good. Are you, can I reboot this? Can I reboot it?
Oh, yeah, you can shut it down. That's fine.
Okay.
Let me just close this.
Yeah. I'm just gonna reboot the machine. I'm working on a problem with they don't know how to fix this problem with
Oh, yeah, still having
So-
problems.
Oh yeah, it's they don't know what to do. People own this stuff. They are totally clueless. So I'm working on something to actually go ahead and fix it a different way.
Alright. Oh, yeah.
So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to write a batch file that's going to start the driver. So what goes on is that when you turn it on, if this is on, what it does is it goes and looks for the whiteboard, right? So this is the whiteboard.
Yeah.
So when this is off and the machine boots up, it looks for the whiteboard and it says, oh, I don't see whiteboard. But what it doesn't do is just let the driver start no matter what. It keeps the driver off.
Okay.
And then when you go to turn it on, it doesn't have something within it to say, I need the driver to start, which is stupid. Really stupid.
There's an old extra on GA. Okay. There's an old extra on GA and we're looking to put it up. I don't think I'm going to get this one going.
Uh-oh. Thinks he has a dead part. That won't be good. Because if it is, it's not good. If it's what he thinks it is. But see now it stopped. It stopped here.
Okay.
So what the problem is this one right here. Go to the property, device manager. One thing is the problem. This guy right here. This one right here.
Okay.
This on USB, this podium. This is the one thing. It gets disabled. And then the smart stuff doesn't work.
Okay.
But it won't just start it, and then that's the thing. Stupid thing.
And then not even a reboot? I mean,
The only fix is to reboot turn this on and reboot the machine. That's the only, but it's not going to be a really fix. But we got even more of an entertaining thing over in the PTD lab. I put the new, you got to, every so often you have to run a new instance of Bloomberg. And then of course Windows updates, they force them on us and everything. Well, somehow over the break, either the Bloomberg, which is a problem with Bloomberg, but the Word and Bloomberg for everybody but the administrator, local administrator. When you go to start it up, Bloomberg crashes Word, but not Excel, which is the big one. Excel is the big one, not Word. But it took me till Friday afternoon, well, Friday night. I was here at 7:30 Friday night. Finally figure out if I got rid of this one UI with Bloomberg add-in. I had to get rid of it in 3 different places. I just renamed it, and that stopped it. But when you start it up, it says can't find Bloomberg toolbox. If you just X that out, it works. And jeez, I still got to figure out the real thing. What are you thinking, Dave?
I'm going to take that DA out of the way. The echo's going to lose the video.
Okay.
I don't know if I can use the echo.
That's an amplifier. See, it's a good thing you did come. Because besides that being the most spaghetti I've ever seen crammed in the back of the seat, this is serious spaghetti block. Capture mixer. Yeah, the projector's connected again. No, I don't. I know we don't have one here either. I don't think Dale. I go check if Dale had one real quick. I want to see if Dale has this together. What do you need? Phil, right? I'll go check. What do you mean? You here?
I need to get a tool.
So, if we can sort of continue, if everybody's okay, I can look up the syllabus on our phone. And of course, now I'm having Wi-Fi connectivity issues. Again, right? When life doesn't work, it just doesn't work. Everybody able to get on the blackboard? Yes? Alright. So, yeah, we don't have to go through the details of the syllabus because this is part 2 of a course, right? So we don't need to talk too much. I just want to give you the details that we need to know. So again, our quizzes are going to be on Mondays. Now they're going to be split between the 2 lecture halls. Last fall we were in the big room over there. Turns out, I don't know if you know this, but that room is used for the faculty senate in the spring. And it's Mondays at 3:30. So then we can't, right? So then now actually Dr. Geiger's group will be in here. We will be in lecture hall 2. Okay, so just make sure that you're aware of that. Environment. All right. We've already talked about the book, so everybody should have chapter 5. If you're new and you don't have it from last semester, I posted the full chapter 5 on the Blackboard anyway, so you're going to have it. And everything that's in there is that you need. Everybody needs to have a clicker. Who has a clicker that I can demonstrate for those who don't have a clicker? So there's 2 versions of the clicker. This is the newer version. This is the older version. Either one will work fine. I noticed this morning there was 3 students, and I will recognize the names. I think you are new. I'm not going to say your names. I will email you, but 3 students who are not registered. Your clicker requires a registration with a subscription on the whole thing. If you have questions, just come see me. I'll write that in an email for you. The 3 of you who don't have that information so that you are aware. And then, who has a calculator? So everybody needs a calculator. You must bring it to class for the first month or so, or the first third of the course. There's going to be a lot of math. When we get to biochemistry, 0 math. It's all concepts. 0. I mean, pick your poison. Some people love the math. They're not so good at concepts. Other people love the concept, don't like the math. So it really depends on you. But just FYI, you have to bring a calculator to class and to the quizzes. Okay? Alright, so chapter 5, and then from the Raymond textbook,
in.
So if there are any additional activities, we may also use that time for the lab as needed, some for reviews, for Q&A. So just be aware that those Mondays are going to be used pretty much throughout the course. I think only one or two that we're not going to tweak at all.
Yeah, I got no signal.
So the
Computer
quizzes
off? No,
are
computer's
50%
on.
of your grade, and you can drop one of them. Okay? So they technically end up
I got no
being
signal
five.
to the PC.
One is worth 10%. The final exam is 25%, homework is going to be 20%, and then attendance and participation, the usual answering the quicker questions will be 5%.
Get closer.
If you need to miss a quiz, you have the option to either choose to drop that one and you're all set, or if you wish to not drop anything and you have proper documentation that you were in an accident or you were in the hospital, you were this or that or the other thing, and you have supporting documents, then you just submit an assessment form. I have to put that in as another thing that has to put on Blackboard.
Not yet.
Makeup form. Then you submit your documents and then we'll allow you to make up that quiz within a week. Okay? Just make sure that if you're ever submitting any type of medical documentation, that the documentation does not disclose any private diagnostic information. Okay? Alright. If you have accommodations of any type, please make sure that all of that paperwork is in and that you request any accommodations at least a week before any assessment. Because otherwise it becomes very difficult for us to accommodate this within that short time period. And any accommodated exams or any makeup exam quizzes will be taken at the testing center, which is in O'Leary. So as before, the homework, every week you're going to get some kind of assignment, and it's going to be due, typically a week or so after, and the due dates will be clearly indicated, and you need to make sure that you complete that information by the due date. Okay? Just a reminder, the attendance and participation grade requires your presence in the classroom. The only instances in which we excuse absences in the classroom is if you've been in the hospital, you've been in some kind of official event that takes you outside of school,
Switch.
military service, or anything of the sort. If there's some random illness that you have a cold one day and you can't come to class, it's unfortunate, but for those types of absences, we cannot accept any type of documentation and use it to make up or excuses. Okay? There's also no opportunities to earn extra credit, so please do not inquire. Because the reason is, if we make an exception for one person, oh, well, let me do a couple of extra points, well, then we have to open that up.
Switcher's on 5,
And it's just statistically not.
which I'm sure it's supposed to be.
Alright, the grade scale is the same as before. And then after that, it's just the statements of academic honesty and professionalism that hopefully I don't need to say anything about. We've had a couple of instances of academic
Still
dishonesty, as most of you are aware of. Right? So, yeah, my apologies if I was a little rough, but in my opinion, cheating is stealing. Right? So, I have very little sympathy. Alright. Okay. So, we only ask that if you bring a cell phone to class, I'm the first one that has a cell phone in class, right? Just make sure you're silent before coming to class. And pretty much that's all I need. Alright, so now, yes, questions? Sure. So, as of right now, we do not have any SEC activities because of the dates that things fell in. It's kind of difficult to put them into the schedule this semester. So,
Started off, you can see here, but not
unfortunately,
here.
or fortunately, we
No,
weren't
we can't see
sure
it anymore.
if you guys felt it was productive in any way. I can try, right? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the email
It
says.
said the DA's
I
back.
don't know that I want to know. Anyway. So as of now, there are none. So let's do the dates again. February 3rd.
It's there,
That's
but
coming
not
up
here.
quick, right? Yeah, it is the 3rd. So that's
One's better than another.
Tuesday, the 18th. March 2nd, March 23rd, because that one's a longer gap because spring break is in the middle right there, so that doesn't count. And then April 6th and April 22nd. And that's, I think that's the last one.
Better to have that than not to have that.
I can't give him anything else right now.
All right?
Take him down.
So we'll probably have that open for reviews or Q&A or
Better to have
more than anything before I come down.
Yeah. Javier. Javier, are you in here next class too?
I am not here for the next
Okay.
Right. I've got an image up there, but not here. I just cannibalized the system to get a picture right there.
Okay.
There's a
So I think it's better to have this than that.
catastrophic failure in here.
Yes.
I don't know if you can work with this,
I
but it's the
probably,
best I can do.
if I can move the keyboard, well, I can do it. I mean, I just
The
have to.
keyboard doesn't have a lot of
Because
movement
once,
in it.
once the PowerPoint is up, all I need is my little thingy, and I don't need to be here. But then, so if I put I can just do it over there.
Yeah,
Okay.
it should come up.
I have to fix this thing. That's
So,
This is just a
so
video.
I'll let you guys wrap up, and then I'll.
all right. I'm wrapping up right now.
Yeah, because this is just a video issue at this point now.
Also, then the pen is not going to work, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean,
No,
we'll make do,
it's just-
right?
this
This
might
is what
still work.
happens.
Oh, yeah,
you,
this works.
You have to improvise.
No, this still works. As long as this is turned on. But it won't stay on the whole time. I don't
Yeah, but
think.
if I move it on the screen, will it detect that I'm moving it?
Is that one of the work?
Okay. I mean, that's going to be.
But this part
awkward,
works.
but-
But yeah, the problem
So
is
if I have it on
if
PowerPoint,
it goes to sleep, that's a problem. You just got to keep watching it to go to sleep. Because when it's not on, as long as you're using it, it won't go to sleep.
so as long as I do this, this will not go to sleep.
No, this part here, you got to watch and make sure this
So
doesn't
if
go to
that
sleep.
if that goes to sleep, then what
Just
happens
turn it back
here?
on. Oh, just turn it back on.
Okay.
No, that's only going to run the pen.
Okay.
Is this room booked out all day?
I have no idea. I didn't check it. Yeah. Yeah, if the pen stops, just you check and see if it's gone to sleep. Wake it back up.
Okay. So what do I tell? Well, I'm not going to be here to tell the next person.
Well, they're going to find out. So,
I can leave a note.
yeah, just tell them
That the-
check the works. That doesn't. Good luck. Tell them we know about it and we'll fix it as soon as we can get in the room. As soon as we can get into the room for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, see how it went to sleep? So all
Yeah.
you got to do is just wake it up.
So I just want to make sure that this is.
Oh, yeah.
That will work.
Yeah.
But and this.
Only if
no,
you wait.
this will not work. Okay.
No, this will work. You
But
just
I have to turn it on. Yeah. Yeah.
As soon as you turn it on and it goes solid green,
Then we're good.
it'll work fine.
Okay.
You'll have total control.
All right, I'll get in here as soon as I can to fix it.
All right. Thanks, man. Sorry to take you out of your way for an urgent situation. Okay. All right, kids. So this is going to be a little bit weird, but because this is not operational, only that. So I have to just kind of set it up with my neck towards the side here. Let me see. Oh, you know what? This is not going to work, I think, because it's not going to detect it. So I'm going to have to put it down here. Okay. Okay, 41 minutes later. I mean, we did the syllabus, so, we lost probably half an hour. All right, let's see if I can get this going. Okay, So the only thing that I don't have is the pen, but I think for today we're going to be fine. I don't think there's going to be math today. All right, so channel 70. If you're new to the clickers, there's a channel button, 70. Press the enter button, and then at that point you can answer. Yes. Okay. Today's fine. So the first day we typically just kind of, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. But just make sure that you always look at the battery indicator on your clicker, particularly when you have a quiz or something of the sort, right? Because the last thing you need is that thing to go dead in the middle of a quiz. That's happened a couple of you last time, right? And then, of course, most importantly, don't forget to bring your clicker. All right, today we're good. All right. So, these are the learning objectives for this chapter. We're going to start talking about chemical reactions, different kinds of chemical reactions. And then we're going to go into more details about the behavior of chemical reactions. We're going to talk about what's known as chemical equilibrium and some concepts related to that. There's a very important principle that we're going to describe in reasonable detail, which, in my opinion, is the governing principle of, believe it or not, all of chemistry. This is one of the most important concepts in the entire year-long course. It's called the Chatelier's principle. You may have heard that before if you've had a chemistry course in the past. And then we're going to talk about things that affect chemical reactions, temperature, pressure, things of the sort. We're going to talk a little bit about thermodynamics. People hear that word and want to start running for the hills, but very, very tip of the iceberg concepts of energy changes and exchanges, important chemical transformations that are going to become critically relevant when we talk about biochemistry, because as you may be aware, every chemical transformation that happens in the human body is for the purpose of sustaining life. And one of the major purposes of those chemical reactions is to generate the energy that we need to be able to continue living, right? So energy concepts, which fall within the umbrella of the concepts of thermodynamics, are going to be important. So a couple of the laws of thermodynamics, some concepts, terms that we're going to define when we get to that point: enthalpy, entropy, Gibbs free energy, and spontaneity of chemical transformations. And again, these terms relate to energy exchanges within chemical transformations. Coupled reactions is going to become a critically important concept in biochemistry. That means that two reactions are related to one another. One drives the other. So you may have a reaction that's not spontaneous, but the energy that one requires to become spontaneous is released by another reaction that is spontaneous, and then that's how things happen. So we're going to put that into the context of biochemical transformation when we start talking about biochemistry. And then we're going to wrap up with a little bit of chemical kinetics, because it's also important to understand what affects how fast or slow reactions proceed. So again, we're going to start with defining the different types of chemical transformations so that you can have an understanding of everything that happens in the universe pretty much. But of course, we're going to concentrate on what's critically important for the human body. So just as I just said, the universe, which includes the body, contains an enormity of specific and individual chemical transformations. However, despite the enormous number of reactions, the manner in which they happen, how things occur, it turns out that you can actually classify every single chemical transformation that exists in the universe into a very short list of types of reactions. So what you really need to be able to do then, which is another of the critical long-term big picture learning objectives of this course, is pattern recognition. You need to be able to look at something, stand back, and say, this looks like this is happening, so this must be this type of reaction. Okay? And again, there's only a handful, a short list, less than 10 types of chemical reactions that every single one that you may identify and look at that's happening in the universe can be classified amongst that relatively short list. So when we're looking at chemical reactions, try to identify what's happening, there are two distinct modes of reactivity that we need to be paying attention to. And they're not mutually exclusive, so they are independent. A reaction can be simultaneously classified in one of these two modalities. One refers to how the atoms rearrange themselves during the reaction. So if you look at the starting materials called reactants and products, and you observe this atom is no longer here, it's here, and this one has changed to that position, and there's been some kind of a reorganization, that's one aspect. And the second aspect is because electrons, as we've learned, are the ones that are responsible for making bonds between atoms. Whether electrons have been transferred or not between the several atoms that are becoming reorganized or rearranging themselves, if there's been a transfer of electrons between atoms, that's a whole other concept that we need to follow. And the term redox is going to come out. We've already learned about oxidation and reduction. So pretty much when electrons are being transferred, there's an oxidation and a reduction process that's happening. But not all processes, not all chemical reactions involve oxidation and reduction. So you need to observe whether there's been a reorganization of the atoms and how they've been reorganized, and whether there was or not a reorganization of the electrons. If there is, then that technically is a redox process. If there wasn't, then there wasn't. There wasn't any. Only the atoms became rearranged. So when we're looking at, we're going to start with the concept of atom reorganization, and then we're going to invoke the whole redox concept. So when we're looking at how atoms reorganize themselves during a chemical reaction, there are pretty much, we can narrow it down to 5 different possibilities of chemical transformations. The first one is what we call a synthesis or combination. Those two terms are synonymous. And in these types of reactions, what is happening is that at least 2 substances are coming together and they yield a single new substance. Only one product is being produced from 2 or more reactants. The converse of that is called the decomposition, and that's pretty much the reverse. So a single substance, one substance, is broken down into multiple, at least 2, but it could be more, other substances. And therefore, we call it a decomposition. The substance becomes decomposed into multiple other things. Then come 2 categories that involve exchanges of pieces between reacting substances. So for these 2, it turns out that, of all things, invoking a ballroom dancing analogy actually works quite well. Okay, and you'll see why in a moment. So single replacement is when 2 substances react and one of them transfers a piece of it to the other one. Okay? So in a ballroom dancing situation, what does that sound like? 2 things reacting, and one of them, part of it, goes to the other one. I'm talking about ballroom dance.
Oh.
Sorry. So you have a couple that's dancing, you have one person coming in and cutting in and taking the other person. Right? That's single replacement. Single replacement. What you're talking about is the next one, which is double replacement. So in double replacement is when parts of both pretty much are exchanged. Right? So that's when you have 2 couples dancing and they switch partners. Right? So then you end up with 2 different products because now a part of this one is with the other one and a part of the other one is with this one. And then there's been a double exchange process. Can you sort of see that? So again, envision, when you're thinking about single replacement, close your eyes, envision it's somebody dancing in a wedding, let's say, right? And then the bride and groom are dancing, and then the father comes along, right? And then starts crying at the moment, right? And then they start with the whole thing, right? That's single replacement. And then double replacement is when the two couples are dancing, and then they just simply, they just swap pieces. So that's double replacement, also called metathesis. And then the last category is what we call a rearrangement or isomerization. Those two terms are synonymous. A single substance gives a single new substance, so one makes one, but there's been a reorganization, i.e. rearrangement, of the atoms. So the structure is different. So again, isomerization, because one isomer turns into another isomer. Okay, so nothing's lost, nothing's gained. Simply things are in different places. Okay? So all you need to do when you're looking at a reaction, if you understand these 5 terms, then all you need to do is when looking at a reaction, regardless of what atoms, what elements, what compounds, what substances are involved, if you recognize these patterns, multiple things making one thing, well, that's a synthesis reaction. Something making 10 different things, that's a decomposition process. Right? Something has one part, this one has 2 parts, and part of this one becomes associated with the other one, and then the rest kind of hangs on itself. That's a single replacement. If both exchange parts, then that's double replacement. And if you see the same atoms just in a different location, and nothing's been lost or gained, then that's a rearrangement or isomerization process. Okay? So, I mean, this is ultra simplified, right? Very, very simple, generic up here. So again, we're going to dissect the different kinds with specific examples. And the reason why we need to learn this is because, again, when we get to the biochemistry portion of the course, when you're going to learn about all sorts of different metabolic pathways, when you take in sugars, glucose, the glucose gets metabolized and the energy that it contains gets extracted. And we're going to talk about a 10-step pathway, 10 steps called glycolysis, starting with glucose, ending up with pyruvate. You need to be able to look at every single step and identify this is a synthesis, this is a decomposition, this is a rearrangement, this is that, based on what's happening. Okay? So, in these types of reactions, we're going to focus, of course, when they involve carbon-containing compounds. So here, actually, we have some terms that I'm just realizing as I'm seeing, oh, and my thing doesn't work. Of course it doesn't, right? Let me see if I can manage to make a little edit here. They told me that if I can just get this going, I can do this. I don't think it's going to do anything. But there was portions that were in the textbook that we sort of skipped. And so you don't know what this means, a sigma bond versus a pi bond. So let me just... Oops. Oh, boy. All right. So... yeah, this is not going to work. I'm just going to point to it. So, sigma bonds refers to the single bond framework of structures. Pi bonds refers to the double and triple bonds. Okay? So when you have a double or a triple bond, the first bond that always occurs between the atoms is initially a single bond. That's called the sigma bond. But then the second or third bond that appears is what we call a pi bond. So just to clarify, how does this come into play in this discussion? One type of synthesis reaction is when you form 2 new, let's replace the term sigma, which is that little O thing, the Greek letter for S, sigma. 2 new let's replace that with single bonds. So notice 2 new single bonds. You see these 2 single bonds here? They appear in place of what was a pi bond, which is the second bond of the double bond. Okay? And this is called an addition reaction. So one thing that I need to clarify right now is that in some cases there's additional terminology, there's additional names that are given to specific types of reactions that fall within a category. So an addition reaction is a type of synthesis or combination reaction. But not all synthesis or combinations are additions. Okay? So what I'm trying to illustrate in this particular example is that if you have a structure that has a double bond, one of which is called a pi bond, and you have another structure that has a single bond, so the single bond between X and Y disappears, the pi bond between the carbons disappears, and that pi bond is replaced, notice, now by bonds to what was this, right? But if you realize 2 things make 1. Yes? That's a synthesis reaction. Now, technically what has happened is that XY has been incorporated, i.e. it has added to this, right? Notice, the skeleton of the carbon-carbon framework is still intact, except that the double bond is gone, but the carbon-carbon system is there, and now something is added on top of it, right? This is why it's called an addition reaction. Same thing here. You can have double bonds not only between carbon, but you can have it between carbon and oxygen, carbon and nitrogen, all kinds of different things. So notice, again, this structure, this second structure, the double bond disappears. In its place, you have two new single bonds, and what has happened is that this has added onto this and produced this. These two are addition reactions, but in the grand scheme of things, they are synthesis or combination because two things are making just one thing. Yes? Everybody's with me? All right. So, one reaction that we're going to discuss at some point in more detail, which is an important type of addition reaction, and of course there's no chalk. Oh, there is chalk. There should be a picture here, but I don't know why it's not there. Anyway, if you have a carbon-carbon double bond, and this reacts with elemental hydrogen, so here X, Y is the same atom. What this ends up producing is that the hydrogen becomes incorporated into the structure. So this is an addition process, also a synthesis or composition reaction. This is referred to as a hydrogenation process. So it's called hydrogenation because the hydrogen molecule becomes incorporated into what was the pi bond, i.e. that double bond of the alkene structure, and that produces an alkane type structure. It also happens with these carbon-oxygen double bonds, which we recall we call them carbonyl compounds. So alkenes, aldehydes, and ketones, structures that if you don't remember their structures, you need to go back and refresh yourself with these functional groups. This is another critically important point that I need to say. You need to go back and refresh yourselves with the structures and names of all of the functional groups we studied in part 1. Because when we start talking about biochemistry, all of those compounds, glucose, starting with glucose and going down the whole list, every single compound you're going to look at when we're studying biochemistry are organic materials. And when we talk about the aldehyde here and the amine there and the carboxylic acid over here and the ketone over there, you need to know what we're talking about. Okay? So alkenes and carbonyl compounds, which are all compounds that contain this carbon doubly bonded to oxygen, they react with hydrogen, and this is a hydrogenation process. Now this process happens within the human body. We're going to discuss multiple reactions in which hydrogen becomes incorporated into a larger structure. It can also be done artificially in the laboratory. And in fact, the production of margarine and other artificial vegetable-derived shortenings is in fact an industrial process in which vegetable oils are hydrogenated, and they then, as we're going to learn about why this all happens as we go through the course, they then become solid because oils are liquids. Turns out oils have bunches of alkenes in their structure. That's why they are unsaturated. Right? You've heard of unsaturated fats versus saturated. We're going to learn about all of this in this course. And if you hydrogenate those alkenes in those structures, it turns out, for a reason we're going to explain later, their physical properties change. Rather than them being liquid, they become solid. Okay, so margarine is a completely artificial product, and so is Crisco. Okay, it's vegetable oil that has been hydrogenated. And the reason why those products came to be is because back in the 40s or 50s, whenever it was that started, it started to become clear that ingesting saturated fats from animal sources led to an increased incidence in cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes, and things of the sort. And then this campaign against butter and lard and all these animal products started. And then the whole thing, oh, because it comes from a vegetable, it has to be much better for you, right? So they started hydrogenating all of these vegetable oils, and then they took what was left, which is shortening, Crisco. I don't know if you realize, again, I don't want to spoil it for you, but as I did with the Oreo cookies, if you don't know the story of the Oreo cookies, talk to your partner that firm that was in the first half of the course. But margarine is nothing other than Crisco with a little bit of coloring to make it yellow, a little bit of flavoring to make it salty and whatever, and that's it, right? It's a completely artificial product. Now, of course, 40, 50 years later, we come to find out, guess what? It was better that you ate butter and lard than these artificial things because there's some consequences of changing the structures of these natural compounds that ultimately end up producing more disease than taking the natural products, which are butter and lard and things of the sort. Now, I'm not advocating people take spoonfuls of butter and lard because that's taking it to the extreme. As with everything in moderation is fine, but margarine, run for the hills. Avoid it at all costs. Margarine and Crisco, not good, except for the little Oreo every now and again, which is fine. All right. So to do this in the laboratory, you need a catalyst. So that's why the reaction is called catalytic hydrogenation. In biology, it's also catalytic hydrogenation because the catalyst is an enzyme that does everything, as we're going to learn when we start talking about biochemistry. So this is what I've been talking about. I forgot this was on the next slide. So this is, again, this right now may not have much meaning to you, but this is the structure of what we call a triglyceride, which is the fancy term for a fat or oil. Okay? So if it's coming from a vegetable source, it has several alkenes within the structure, and these are called oils. And in addition to these long-chain hydrocarbon pieces, these are actually part of what we call a fatty acid. So if you, again, my pen isn't working today, but if I were to just circle this piece up here, this is technically coming from what we call a fatty acid. Here's a second one. Here's a third one. They all become esterified to form 3 esters onto this skeleton here that's called glycerol. So they're called triglycerides because it's 3 of them that have formed these ester linkages on what was originally glycerol. And if you hydrogenate it, notice the alkenes have disappeared. But what do you observe for the one in the middle? The double bond persists. However, what can you say about that double bond compared to the ones on the top? So it has changed orientations. It has become isomerized. This is what we call a cis double bond. So if you draw a line across the carbon-carbon double bond, we're going to talk about stereochemistry before we start talking about carbohydrates. But just to give you a little preview. If you draw a line across the carbon-carbon double bond, then you'll notice that the 2 chains that are attached to each carbon are both going in the same direction. That's called a cis arrangement. And all of these are cis, because again, if you draw a line across this bond and that bond and that bond and that one, the 2 carbon chains that are coming off of the whole thing are going in the same direction. This one, however, if you draw a line across the carbon-carbon bond, double bond, this goes going this way, this was going down. So they're going in opposite directions. That's called a trans arrangement. Okay? So you may have heard of trans fats. The person who has not heard of trans fats, then unfortunately I'm sorry to say you live under a rock. Trans fats have been in the news for the past decade as being the culprit of all kinds of diseases. This turns out to be an artifact of the process of hydrogenation, that not all double bonds become hydrogenated. Some of them actually remain as alkenes, but they change their orientation to trans. And then all of this went into the population. So Crisco and margarine contains trans double bonds in their alkenes, a little bit, right? And then this is what is now later, after everybody sort of stopped eating butter and lard, and they started eating Crisco and margarine. Well, now we come to find out that the incidence of cardiovascular events and disease and all kinds of problems, as they relate to the trans fats in the population, it's worse. It turns out that it's worse. So this is why you probably have heard trans fats have been banned from all kinds of places. If you pick up a package of anything, no trans fats. Pay attention to, I hope everybody, when you're buying something you're going to put into your mouth, you should be looking at the label, right? So you're going to see on all kinds of different things, no trans fats, no trans fats. McDonald's has banned trans fats out of all of his products. And all kinds of different places. Entire cities have created laws banning trans fats from their restaurants because this is so bad, right? So it's an artifact of the catalytic hydrogenation process. So oils are extracted from natural products, all kinds of plants and all kinds of places, olive, avocado, you name it. And then they're hydrogenated, right? And again, if you look at a label, and you may see partially hydrogenated soybean oil, partially hydrogenated safflower oil. See, it's because they've been treated this way to either completely or partially hydrogenate. So particularly during the partial hydrogenation process, in which you don't necessarily attempt to completely hydrogenate it, that's when even more of the trans bonds appear. And these things are out there. Okay? All right, so those of you who are in nutrition or taking nutrition courses or will be taking nutrition courses, you're going to learn even more about all these things in those specific courses. All right. So here's a physiological reaction, as simple as it is, CO2 and water. Where does the CO2 come from? Correct. So our body produces enormous amounts of CO2 from metabolism, as we're going to learn when we start talking about metabolic pathways. And the CO2 is extremely nonpolar. It doesn't dissolve well in water. But a good portion of it actually reacts chemically with the water and produces carbonic acid. So if you pay attention to what's happening here, two things are making one. So this is a synthesis or composition reaction, right? Two things making one. This one here is trying to show a little bit more detail as to what's actually happening. And then it turns out, if you, back to the addition process, if you pay close attention, what you'll notice is that H2O as HOH, XY, X is H, OH is the Y, right, has added across one of the carbon-oxygen double bonds. So one of them remains intact, and then notice how HOH has split, and it has replaced what was one of the carbon-oxygen double bonds. So again, if you have a hard time seeing this is why it's so important that this portion of the course is going to introduce you in a reasonable amount to this concept of pattern recognition. You need to be able to look at something that you've never seen before and identify what's happening here. Well, the big picture is two things making one. That's a synthesis reaction. If you focus into more detail, amongst all of the different kinds of synthesis reactions, this happens to be an addition process, because the the XY that we saw previously, right? XY has added across a carbon-oxygen double bond. Well, what's the X? Well, the X is H. What's the Y? OH. And notice, it's become incorporated. Okay, so you need to be able to look at these things and identify what's happening. Okay? So, this particular type of reaction where water is adding across a double bond. And again, my apologies that anytime I'm referring to a double bond, the slides talk about pi bonds, but we've sort of already gotten to that point where we can equate that. These processes in which H2O becomes incorporated into what was an alkene, and remember, we don't draw the H's, but technically there's an H here that was the counterpart of the OH, right? Let me go back here. Here we draw it because it's on oxygen, but when it's on carbon, we don't. So notice this alkene has disappeared, and in its place, OH, how many hydrogens are on this carbon here? Anyone? So again, you need to go back and refresh yourself on how to interpret skeletal structures of organic materials. So carbon forms how many bonds? 4 in total. So you see 3, right? There's 1 here and there's 2 here, so it needs 1 more bond. There's a hydrogen, 1 hydrogen, right? If you look at this carbon over here, which is the same carbon that's on the left, how many hydrogens on that carbon? There's two, right? So where did the second one come from? Well, it came from the water. HOH added across the double bond. Okay? So this is a addition reaction. It's a synthesis process. This one also has a specific name because it involves water. It's called a hydration reaction. So hydration reactions are addition reactions which fall under the umbrella of synthesis or composition reactions. So there's multiple layers sometimes that need to be aware of. Why do we focus on these details? Because when we're looking at biochemistry later, both of these reactions are part of biochemical calculus we're going to study in detail, right? This is part, anybody recognize this reaction? Anybody who may have had biochemistry or something of the sort in the past? So this is one of the last steps of the citric acid or Krebs cycle, right? This is fumarate making malate, okay? Sort of 2 steps before the thing is over, right? And then this reaction here, notice again an alkene, water is consumed, 1 product from 2. So this is a synthesis reaction. An alkene has disappeared and it has acquired XY, right? So it's an addition process. Specifically, the XY is HOH. So it's a hydration process. Okay? The class ends in about 3 minutes. 2 minutes. Yeah.
I'm going to rip into that system.
Okay. All right. So, quick. What time is it anyway? Let me see. All right. So let's just do a quick wrap up here. All right. So now is the opposite. Decomposition. A single substance, starting material, reactant produces several products. So here's one structure, single structure, producing 2, right? So this is a decomposition. Now it turns out that just like we have an addition reaction, XY incorporates into an alkene, we call that addition. Turns out that the reverse of that can also happen. That's called an elimination. We're going to see examples of that. So in an elimination reaction, again, a larger molecule loses 2 pieces. They end up bonded to one another, and then a pi bond, i.e. double bond, remember pi relates to double, is produced within the same structure. So notice, here's this structure now going in the opposite direction that we've already talked about for addition. A new double bond appears, pieces fall off and come together. This is called an elimination. And what happens if water is what's released? Well, when water added, we called it hydration. When water is let go, we call it dehydration. Okay? All right, we'll come back to this on Thursday. Hopefully this will be all set.